Welcome, Big Ten fans. This is Big Ten Ted Live. And with that, welcome into another edition of Big Ten Ted Live here on a Wednesday night. We've got all kinds of topics to get to here as this show progresses. Really looking forward to the content here on tonight's program. And if you want to steer the discussion maybe in a different direction once we get to that point, I got three topics that we want to talk about, that I want to talk about here tonight. But if you want to steer it in a different discussion, I know realignment is the hot topic of the offseason. And I know it will continue to probably be the hot topic of almost every offseason here for the next 10 or years and change. So we might talk about that. We might talk about that here. You know, the hot rumor of the day, of course, Oregon and Washington to the Big Ten. You know, they appear to be waiting until maybe a Big Ten commissioner is named, maybe sometime later in May, before they gaze their eyes on what is set to be maybe an underwhelming Pac-12 media contract. So you can talk about that. Anything, leave it in the comments below. But here's what we're going to get to today. We're going to talk about Michigan, okay, because there's been a lot of hullabaloo about them going into the state of Ohio, grabbing a 4-star running back, and oh boy, here comes Michigan. Is it time to talk about Michigan turning the corner in terms of not only their on-the-field play, because the last 2 years they've most certainly established themselves as the top on-the-field threat in the conference, but is that starting to happen in recruiting? Because, you know, they've been somewhere between 10 and 15 in terms of recruiting classes. If that goes on the uptick, are we going to see a level of domination like we saw with Ohio State before? So we will get into that. I also want to talk about Wisconsin. Can Wisconsin win the Big Ten with Luke Fickell, first-year head coach Luke Fickell? Okay, because if you look at the flag behind me, got to win the West to get to the Big Ten championship game. Okay, can they do that, and can they win in a one-game scenario versus the Big Ten East champion? We'll get on to that as we continue on here throughout the program, because, man, Wisconsin, that's a real good football team. Okay, the indications coming out of spring camp and, of course, all the players that they've brought in this offseason, it points towards a renaissance of Wisconsin to get back to winning 9 games, to winning 10 games, maybe, just maybe, even more games than that. So we will talk about the Wisconsin Badgers. And then I want to talk about new Big Ten versus new SEC. With the additions of USC and UCLA, and then Texas and Oklahoma on the other side down south, is the gap really tighter than it has been? Just how big of a gap is there a gap between the SEC and the Big Ten? It's definitely worth discussing. Once again, thanks for tuning in to Big Ten Ted Live here on a Wednesday night. So as I said, I want to start things off talking about Michigan. Are they the big dogs in the Big Ten? That's what me and maybe a lot of other people, maybe a lot of you guys want to know. Michigan is going into the state of Ohio and grabbing some lifelong Buckeyes. Jordan Marshall is a name that you guys have got to keep an eye on, right? 4-star running back, number 3 player in the state of Ohio, top 100 player in the country, recently committed to the University of Michigan. It perked a lot of people's interest and got people saying, is Michigan now taking over on the recruiting trail like they have on the football field? Is this the turn where Michigan truly establishes themselves as the big dog and starts to take over their neighbors and arch rival recruiting territory in the Ohio State University. Before we talk about that, before we really dive into that, you got to look at stats and you got to take a look at numbers, because Ohio State has had sheer domination on their home state. They've had utter domination on the state of Ohio. You look at 2023, Ohio State landed 7 of the top 8 players in the state of Ohio. Okay, 2022, they landed the top 2 players in the state. 2021, they landed the top 5 of the 6 players, 5 of the top 6 players in the state of Ohio that year, including 5-star player and one of the best defenders in the country that year in Jack Sawyer. The last time Ohio State didn't get the number 1 and number 2 players in the state of Ohio was 2019. They got the number 1 player that year, and I think it was the number 4 player as well. Point being, Ohio State has dominated the state of Ohio. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that that's the reason for their success. I think it's far from it. I'll get to that here a little bit later on. Because when I look at Ohio as a recruiting territory, I see them a lot like a Pennsylvania. I see them a lot like a Virginia. They're not a California. They're not a Texas. They're not a Florida. Okay, and then you could maybe throw other southern states in there like a Louisiana and like a Georgia as well. They're not on that top tier in terms of talent. But when you start looking at the next tier of talent across the country in states, high school football and high school recruiting, that's where you got to start to take a look at the state of Ohio. Because Ohio is right in there with your Pennsylvanias, with your Virginias as that next tier. And it's so fortunate that Ohio State has that in their backyard. It's so fortunate that they've been able to dominate in that state. And that state is their home state. But make no mistake about it. It's because of Ohio State's national recruiting. That's why they are what they are. The reason their wide receiver U is not plucking the best wide receivers in the state of Ohio, it's plucking the best wide receivers year after year after year after year out of anywhere in college football. So even if Michigan is able to go into the state of Ohio, and even if they're able to get 1 or 2 players in the top 5 for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, I'm not sure if it's going to make that much of a difference because of Ohio State's ability to recruit nationally. They are a national brand once it comes to recruiting. Now, I will say this. It definitely doesn't hurt for Michigan to go in there and put a foot down and dip your toe in the water that is the state of Ohio recruiting. Okay, because what it does eventually, you're going to get 1 toe in there, and then you're going to get another toe, and then you're going to get another toe. Eventually, you're going to get a whole foot. Eventually, you're going to be knee deep. Eventually, you're going to be up to the hip. And eventually, you're going to see a 5-star kid. Eventually, you're going to see a Jack Sawyer in the state of Ohio. Eventually, a Drew Alar with a 5-star kid in the class of 2022 out of the state of Ohio. Eventually, you're going to get these types of kids where you're going to land. Michigan, maybe instead of Ohio State, is going to land on a 5-star kid out of the great state of Ohio. This is a good thing for Michigan. I think it's a step in the right direction. It shows just how they're elevating within the state of Ohio. Remember, Jordan Marshall is just one guy. They're also a big-time leader right now for Brian Robinson, a 4-star edge rusher, number 5 player in the state, top 150 in the country right now. I firmly believe, so that's 2 kids in the top 5. It's 2 kids in the top 5 from Ohio that are going to Michigan. If they can continue to keep this up, this is something that will pay dividends later on. But as of right now, in terms of the narrative that says Michigan is taking over recruiting and Michigan is taking that next step, I'm just not so sure right now. Pump the brakes. Let's see it over time because Ohio State has dominated their home state over time. It's going to take some time to establish a pipeline from Michigan to Ohio State. Ohio State, I don't think they should be overly concerned, but they should try to nip this in the butt. They should try to make this a 1-year wonder of Michigan's recruiting prowess inside of the state of Ohio. But I'm not worrying about it too much because the numbers say Ohio State generally dominates the state of Ohio in recruiting. Both teams can take something from this, and both teams will and should take something from this. So when you look at Michigan, when you look at Ohio State, these are the things the offseason is made of. These hot, spicy hot recruiting battles, right? And if Michigan is able to go with skill players, right? Ohio State has owned the skill players. Michigan has won with ground and pound. And then for Michigan to go in and get a skill player, that might say something as well. So later in the show, we're going to talk about Wisconsin. Can they win the Big Ten? You know what else we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about new SEC versus new Big Ten. But I see a few comments coming in, so I'm going to get to them. And guess what? To nobody's surprise, they're about conference realignment. Here's something. Friend of the channel, Lord Raiden, chiming in. Since expansion is always a discussion, here's an outside-the-box idea. Why doesn't the Big Ten invite the University of Toronto? Going across the border into Ontario. It's like a top 10 worldwide school, 65,000 students. University of Toronto is a good school. University of Toronto is a very, very good school. Believe AAU, if I'm not mistaken, they're the only non-American university that is AAU. And I just looked it up because I saw these comments coming in during the countdown of tonight's live stream. I think their nickname is the Varsity Blues, the University of Toronto Varsity Blues. Maybe that was just something else I was seeing, but I think that's their nickname. I think that's their school nickname, which is very interesting. Of course, when you look at the Big Ten, I've seen ideas thrown out like this. I've seen Harvard thrown out as a possible Big Ten expansion idea, right? Going into Boston, it doesn't get any more prestigious academically than Harvard. You got to bring something athletically. You got to bring something on the field. That's what I think. That's why I think Stanford and Cal will probably never be Big Ten members. They bring a decent market, Bay Area, San Francisco, that. They don't really bring anything athletically. They're pretty good at the Olympic sports, Stanford and Cal. But when you take a look at generating revenue and generating ratings from football and even men's basketball, Cal was, I think, very bad on the basketball court this season. Okay, I don't think Stanford and Cal really add much to the Big Ten. That's why you need the entire package. You need the entire package to be a Big Ten member, to get those invites. USC and UCLA. I mean, look at those two together. You bring Los Angeles. USC pops a football rating. Football powerhouse. Blue blood, some might say the Southern California Trojans are. I think you got to pack a punch. Although I appreciate the creativity, because sometimes it's creativity that needs to happen in order for you to kind of make headway in all of this and maybe gain some things financially. So I see that. So we'll just keep going through some comments here today. ESPN wants Washington and Oregon in the Big 12 from Congo. When I look at Washington and Oregon, it's a very interesting case. And, you know, when you take a look at the battle between the Pac-12 and the Big 12, how much more does the Big 12 really add than the Pac-12? You know, like, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I just don't know how much more the addition is with the Big 12 as opposed to the Pac-12. Staying together, like, seems like a better idea for the Pac-12. Bide your time. If you can't get in here in 2024, bide your time until 2030 and then make it happen from there. That seems to be the course of action for Washington and Oregon if they want to get in the Big Ten that you talked about 2024, and then you talk about 2030. Two paths to the Big Ten, because I think that's what I don't think it's a secret. I think it's maybe one of the worst kept secrets is Washington and Oregon trying to make their way to the Big Ten Conference. I think they add something. I just don't know how much. I just don't have the data in front of me to really know where things are going. I don't really know how much Oregon and Washington. I think people will watch Oregon. I think people will watch Washington. I think more people will watch Oregon than will watch Washington. You put them in the Big Ten, I don't know where they end up. I don't know where the Huskies and the Ducks end up after you throw them in this conference. I really don't. Let's go more from Congo. Texas A&M and Missouri might be in the Big Ten next. These SEC deals. I did a video before talking about could there be a possibility of some SEC schools jumping to the Big Ten Conference? Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be a coup for the Big Ten? To see them, oh my gosh, why on earth would an SEC school leave for the Big Ten? Would love Texas A&M. If we had some forward thinking to really ponder this, having Texas and Texas A&M and going after them kind of as a pair like we did USC and UCLA, that would have had to happen years ago. Would that have gotten the Big Ten into a different spot? Man, getting them into Texas, man, that would have been great. I just, as much as Texas A&M hates Texas, I just don't foresee it happening. I just don't foresee. Missouri is an interesting one, but if you're the Big Ten, you're going to dilute the payout to your members by adding Missouri? What does Missouri bring to your league? What does Missouri bring? They don't really bring a lot. I don't think they bring a lot. Markets, I know they got St. Louis and KC nearby, but that doesn't really do it. The moves that the Big Ten is making right now, they're packing a punch. They're big-time moves. There is an escalator clause specifically mentioned in this new TV deal with Notre Dame. Mentioned by name in the contract. Big Ten's just not going to add people to just to add people. Just to say, hey, SEC, we took some of your guys. They're not going to do that. They're going to be very strategic about it. With the new commissioner coming in May, it might take some time for him to formulate a committee and formulate a plan of what he wants to do. This stuff might take a while. More. Got some comments coming in here from Lord Raiden. As I just said, I don't think he says the same thing. If the comment feels like popping up, which right now it doesn't. There it is. I don't think Missouri adds anything, and A&M would be a hell of an ad. I'd rather have Kansas than Missouri. I think I think Kansas and Missouri bring comparable television markets. I think they both are there near Kansas City and stuff. I don't think there's that much of a difference between Missouri and Kansas. Kansas brings basketball, which I don't really think basketball adds that much, to be honest with you. And I honestly believe that if the Big Ten wanted Kansas, they'd have Kansas by now. I just don't think that they really add anything. I drove through Kansas on my way out to the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, and man, their football stadium needs work. That is not a great football stadium. It's just not. It is not a good football stadium. It is not it's arguably not even up to Big 12 caliber. It is not a good stadium. So, that's legendary basketball venue. But football, I just don't think so. I just don't think they pack what the Big Ten wants. More from Congo. FSU and Notre Dame will, strong word right there, will be in the Big Ten. I can't see SEC adding. I can see the SEC and Florida State. I always thought this when it comes to South and these ACC teams. I always thought it would be Florida State, Clemson, Miami, Georgia Tech. Why those four? Georgia Tech? They had their chance in the SEC. And they left town. What was that, the 50s or the 60s? I can't remember exactly when. Why would the SEC go after? For the SEC, it's about protecting your turf. That's what I've always seen it as. Because if the Big Ten, if the ACC implodes in 12 to 15 years, and everybody's ripe for the picking, everybody's out there. The last thing the SEC wants is for the Big Ten to get into Atlanta, get into Florida, get into the Carolinas, South Carolina, I should say. North Carolina is not in the SEC right now. That's the last thing they want, because now the Big Ten is able to go into the South for recruiting. It's able to kind of dilute some of the recruits down there as well, even if it's Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech I don't think they're as bad as a program as people think. Okay, this is a Georgia Tech, at least I believe in the college football playoff era, that has been to a New Year's Six game. Now, it's been a while, but right here and right now, like if I'm the Big Ten, I would love Georgia Tech. Great academically, AAU brings a really good television market, and it's a solid athletic department. I don't think it's far from outstanding. But you bring Georgia Tech with a Florida State, who's really working on becoming an AAU member, and now all of a sudden, boom, there it is. Here it is. All of a sudden, Florida State and Georgia Tech, you went into Florida, you went into Atlanta, all of a sudden now the Big Ten has a foothold in the South. I think the SEC is going to try to protect their turf. And to be honest with you, when you look at it from a television perspective, you look at it from television, it's, holy cow, it's Florida State, Miami, Clemson, Georgia Tech. That is a big quattro, brother. That is a big time addition, because if I'm the SEC and whenever this next round, if I'm looking at the ACC, Clemson is one. I think that they're a great program. I think you got to add somebody down in Florida, whether it's Miami or Florida State, and I think you got to protect your turf. We talked about Georgia Tech as well down there. So there's protecting your turf, I think, is the number one priority that the SEC is going to try to do. So then where does that leave the Big Ten as far as Eastern expansion? Well, when I look at the Big Ten, now you got to take a look at, okay, let's say this is the scenario. We're diving down the rabbit hole here. We're going right down the rabbit hole. Jared Jones quickly. I feel like the SEC would have too many Tier 1 teams if they added FSU and Clemson. They're also just coming off ads of Texas and Oklahoma. Okay, some people, I don't think I'm one of them, but some people might say, well, that's Tier 1-ish. Maybe they're not right now, but when Texas and Oklahoma are Texas and Oklahoma, those can be Tier 1 football programs. I don't know what the SEC wants to do. This is an SEC Steve. This is Big Ten Ted. So I'm not sure. I'm very curious to see how this is all going to go, because I really believe that the Big Ten wants to go east. And I really believe outside of Oregon and outside of Washington, I don't really see much out west for the Big Ten. Do you? Look around. I always go into Wikipedia. I pull up the AAU map because that's a prerequisite, for getting into the Big Ten. A lot of the Pac-12 is in there. Colorado's in there. Utah's in there. Washington's in there. Oregon's in there. There's a lot in there from AAU. But when you really factor in, because here's the thing people forget about. People talk about TV markets. People talk about how good of a football team they are, how good of a basketball team they are, blah, 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 all this stuff. If you add one team, that dilutes the payout to all of the other full members. Okay? It now all of a sudden, instead of getting $100 million, I get $90 million. Okay? President of the university don't want to take a pay cut. Nobody in today's day and age of college football, TV realignment, conference realignment, all this stuff, nobody wants to take a pay cut. That's the one thing. USC and UCLA drove up the price of that record-setting Big Ten television contract. Who's going to drive up the price? Because when you look at Oregon and Washington, They're coming in at a reduced share. End of story. End of story. That's it. They ain't coming in at full share. Where's that money coming from? Where's that money coming from? Big Ten presidents, everybody commissioned, they want to add value to the Big Ten. Big shout out to Jared Jones. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the support. Really haven't done a ton of these live streams. Probably should be doing more. Probably should be doing a more consistent schedule. But I really like the concept of these live streams. And thank you for the vote of confidence, so to speak. And thank you for the super chat. It helps support the channel and allow me to kind of do more and expand more of what I want to do here on this channel. This is definitely a passion project for me. I love talking this with you. And we're kind of in the realignment mode here right now. We'll get to Wisconsin. Can they win the Big Ten? We'll get to Big Ten versus SEC. Big Ten versus SEC is kind of got some realignment aspects to them, but just want to get through some of these comments. Jared Jones, more from him, agreeing that the Big Ten wanting to go east and not west. I just think that there's more different stuff out east. I just think if you bring in Oregon and Washington, let's dive it down. You take out Oregon, you take out Washington, what's left? I talked about Stanford and Cal before. They don't bring jack athletically. They don't bring jack for a fan base. San Francisco, great. Bay Area, great. TV market, great. Olympic sports, great. It just doesn't, there's no value there. The only value is their academics. It doesn't get much better as a pair academically than Stanford and Cal. Maybe if they went out and got Harvard and Yale. But what a Big Ten rivalry right there, Harvard and Yale. But Stanford, I just don't see it, Stanford and Cal. Originally, I was on board to say Oregon, Washington, Stanford, Cal. Get to 20. No. Doesn't have the value. You're telling me, look, if I'm a TV network, you're going to tell me I got to pony up tens of millions of dollars to add Stanford? To add Cal? Cal? Are you kidding me? Cal? You look at Power 5 football. Colorado has been a bad program. They're going to get better. But Cal, man, they have not been a good team. Ever since Sonny Dykes really left there, that has not been a good football program. The Cal Bears. So now if you don't have them, what do you, Utah, Arizona, Colorado? I don't know. I just don't think Deion Sanders is going to do enough and provide enough oomph to get Colorado to the freaking Big Ten. I just don't foresee that happening. That's kind of out of left field, so to speak, for Deion. To be honest with you, with Deion, I don't think he's going to stay at Colorado that long. That's my belief. Eventually, he's going to coach somewhere down south. Eventually, he's going to coach at a really good program if he succeeds at Colorado. Oh, let's dive into some more comments here. We got some good stuff going on. Lord Raiden. Imagine getting some of that South Florida speed running behind a Big Ten offensive line. That's always been the dream, right? There's plenty of speed in Big Ten country, I'll tell you that. Ever watch Ohio State on TV? Ever watch Blake Corum run away from a defense? There's speed in the Big Ten. There's speed in the Big Ten. But yeah, obviously, down south is where it's at. That's the thing for the Big Ten. If they can get in, like say you saw a scenario where the Big Ten held serve where they're at right now, and then they go out and get Florida State and Georgia Tech, and the SEC gets Miami and Clemson. That's just spitballing here. Say they get that actual combination of teams, then what? Then what? I think that's the thing we got to look at, because, man, if the Big Ten can get into the South and get that recruiting. Atlanta's a hub of a lot of really good players. Obviously, Florida's Florida. South Florida, more than maybe other parts of the state. All right, let's get to some more comments here. Cal Stanford don't bring anything. Jared Jones is on that train. TV ratings. Like, when Stanford was good, Jim Harbaugh going to David Shaw, their stadium was not, people don't care about Stanford. They care about the Golden State Warriors. They care about the San Francisco 49ers. Like, they care about all of them. The Bay Area, I always thought, even though the Oakland Raiders just left the Bay Area, I always thought the Bay Area was a professional sports area. I mean, Golden State Warriors, San Francisco 49ers, like those are two really good professional sports franchises. Also, California has proven if you're not the LA Lakers, you got to win to get my attention because there's a lot going on in California. There's a lot going on out in California. Lord Raiden, if I can get this comment to show up. There it is, a little slow on the old computer here. There's speed in Big Ten country, and then there's South Florida speed. That is very true. That is very true. I think they run maybe faster 40s in Florida than they do in Minnesota. You haven't seen me run, though. I got that Minnesota speed. Oh, that Minnesota speed. You got to run away from something here in the old metro. Our buddy Dennis Young, resident Nebraska fan, talking about Trey Palmer's speed was faster than all of them. 4.3. Man, I will miss seeing him on the football field. Imagine him being in a Matt Rule system. That'd be interesting because he's more about running the ball than maybe Mark Whippet around Whipple was at Nebraska. I think Trey Palmer really benefited from Nebraska's passing attack last season. There's speed in the Big Ten. There's speed. I know the mantra and the narrative has always been, look at those beefy Big Ten guys. It's all about bring your lunch pail to work and, sit down and have a sandwich and bull somebody over. Power football, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Right? Woody and Bo. That's always what it's been. That's always been the narrative. And it was that, and it still is a physical brand of football. But there's still a lot of speed in this league, too. Mr. Raiden, getting a lot of love here tonight. If Stanford and Cal were in the Big Ten, they'd sell out every home game, and every Big Ten team would get at least one trip to California every year. How much you want to bet on that? Now, we'll probably never find out, except maybe in the upcoming EA Sports College Football 24, if there's some sort of attendance figure, a dynamic attendance feature, that if you put Stanford and Cal in the Big Ten, that their attendance continues to go up. Who knows? Who knows? But I like Stanford is a pretty good stadium. I think Cal, if you ever look at Cal Stadium in the mountains, it looks like looks kind of like a mini Rose Bowl. It reminds me of kind of a mini Rose Bowl, California Memorial Stadium. Okay, what else we got here? We got somebody in here. Jonathan Weaver coming in. Appreciate that. Big Ten needs to solidify the West before they can go east. And I think it would just be Oregon and Washington. That is absolutely correct. Because as I just said, you might be a little late here coming into the live chat, which is completely understandable. People are going to continue to come in and out. No, there's no one else that really provides value. Like, I look at the only teams that might provide value, I think, are the mountain teams. Utah and Colorado. But I only think they provide value because of what their teams might do on the field. Colorado went 1-11. Yeah, I know. It's about the potential. I'll talk about in my Big Ten versus SEC segment. A lot of things are about potential right now in the Big Ten. A lot of things are about potential. So I just don't see it. Oregon and Washington gets you to 18. Who gets you to 20? Whether I want to believe it, I don't want to believe it. There's somebody else that doesn't want to believe it. There's other people right now that say, screw Notre Dame. Let them do it. Let them play MAC teams. Let them run out of opponents when these conferences get huge. You can't deny Notre Dame's nationwide fan base. You can't deny Notre Dame's brand. I want to deny it, but you can't. If they are available and they want to dance, you got to at least talk about it. You got to at least say, hey, you want to come to the dance? Let's talk. Let's see what can happen. So That's kind of where I'm at with Notre Dame, because they're that big. They're going to draw, like, people aren't indifferent about Notre Dame. You love them or you hate them. And even though their TV numbers have dropped, I still think that maybe something will happen. It'll be interesting because, as Lord Radin says, the bridge has been burned. Someone posted on Twitter today, and I should have screenshotted it, about in 1990, there was an internal memo with Jim Delaney in the Big Ten Conference about, hey, let's set up a meeting with Notre Dame about joining the league. It was 1990. That's right before they signed their deal, right? That was right when the CFA, the College Football Association, that kind of imploded in the late 80s. With that Georgia and Oklahoma Supreme Court case. I forgot the name of it off the top of my head. And then of course Notre Dame signed that exclusive. That was right before Notre Dame signed their exclusive contract with NBC. Okay, and Notre Dame obviously they said no a couple of times to the Big Ten. There's always been some sort of rift back and forth between the old B1G and the old ND and the Notre Dame. But here's the deal with Notre Dame, and I did a video on, is Notre Dame necessary for Big Ten expansion? Go check it out on the channel if you haven't already. When I look at Notre Dame, because we're going, and I'll get to this in my Big Ten versus SEC segment, trust me, we're going to get there eventually. When I talk about Notre Dame, what are you going to do in this age of the Power 2? The Big Ten is your conference. If the Power 2 exists, if you don't get into the Big Ten, I mean, maybe the SEC would take you, but you got to try to find your way in the Big Ten. And considering what Jack Swarbrick and someone of their administration has said recently, and NIL, I can tell this is an administration. These are some people right now that are a little bit behind the times. We got a lot going on, right? That you heard about that congressional hearing talking about NIL earlier today. Oh man, I'm lost. I'm lost. There's a lot going on. I can talk about this realignment stuff because heck, that's what we're talking about right now. But man, talk to me about an off tackle. Talk to me about a pulling guard. Talk to me about a dime defense. Academics, business, that's maybe not my jam. It's maybe not my jam. All right, good realignment talk. Good realignment talk. Okay, our next thing that I want to talk about here on the program. Wisconsin. My home state, by the way, that's where I'm from. Living in Minnesota right now. Born and raised in the Badger State. Just an hour north of Madison. Wisconsin's brought in a lot of talent this year. A lot of talent the Badgers have on their roster. Is it enough? Can they do it in year one? Can they win a Big Ten championship? The Wisconsin Badgers have brought in a ton of talent. It is a new look Wisconsin football program. But is it enough to go from 6-6 to a Big Ten championship in just one season? Okay, so to get to the Big Ten championship, to hoist that trophy, you got to make it to the Big Ten championship game. Look at the flag behind me. Can you honestly say that there is a better offense right now in the Big Ten West than Wisconsin? I'll move. I'll let you look at the logos. No, there's nothing. They are an explosive football team, and they will be an explosive football team. They have brought in a ton of talent. And maybe outside of Ohio State, this might be the most explosive team in the Big Ten Conference. Here's a reason why Wisconsin also is very favorable in winning the Big Ten West. Look at their September. Home against Buffalo, at Washington State, home against Georgia Southern, and at Purdue. That's a pretty easy September when your toughest games are at Washington State and at Purdue, a Purdue team that's losing a lot coming into this season. Okay, you jump forward to October. Rutgers and Iowa at home to start the month before going to Illinois and then hosting Ohio State. The schedule is favorable for them. Their East Division crossovers are Rutgers at home, on the road at Indiana in November, and they got a home game against Ohio State, which will be not even anything close to a gimme for the Buckeyes. In Camp Randall, it'll be the first time Ryan Day visits the hallowed halls of Camp Randall Stadium. So when you look at their competition in the West Division, Iowa at home, Nebraska at home. They got to go on their toughest games all year long at Illinois and at Minnesota. That's the toughest. That's it. Right now, with what's going on at Minnesota, Wisconsin is a lot more talented than the Gophers. Right here and right now, Illinois is going to be a little bit of a challenge. Okay, later on this week on the channel, you might have something that you might like seeing if you're an Illinois fan. Let me just put it that way. But this is a Wisconsin team. Their schedule is favorable. They have some of the most talent in the conference. Outside of those top three in the East, who's the most talented team? It's probably Wisconsin. Nebraska is full of the P word. They're full of potential. They're full of guys, MJ Sherman, Eric Gilbert, Thomas Fedoni. They're full of all kinds of guys that could be good. But when I look at Wisconsin, when I look at Tanner Mordecai and what he's done at quarterback for SMU, and now I put Tanner Mordecai into an offense coordinated by Phil Longo, okay? And Phil Longo has produced awesome statistical seasons for his quarterback. Drake May is going to be an NFL stud when he's a high NFL draft pick when he comes out. Okay, this North Carolina team these last few seasons have put up some of the best stats offensively in the ACC. Okay, so why can't he do it at Wisconsin? He can. They can. Wisconsin is going to have an advantage playing in the West and not playing difficult crossover games throughout this season. The big question for the Badgers I have is on defense. But if you take a look at their linebacking core, I think it's going to be real good. Jordan Turner, CJ Getz, Mamea Jongmeta, and then you look at transfer Jeff Petrowski from Michigan State. I know he's been injured a lot, but you look at that 2021 season, he wreaked havoc in the backfield. Okay? Their secondary and their line, they're going to have to find some guys. They're going to have to find some depth. But if there's anybody I trust to coach defense, if there's anybody I trust to develop defensive football, it's Luke Fickell. It's Luke Fickell. Wisconsin won this offseason. We talk about Nebraska calling themselves offseason national champs. Big Ten, I would argue Wisconsin is the offseason Big Ten champion. So you got to get to the Big Ten championship game. You got to beat teams like in Iowa. You got to beat Illinois. You got to beat all of these other West Division teams. And I think they can do that. I think they can get in at a 9-3, maybe a 10-2, maybe other records like that. And then it's a one-game scenario against Ohio State, against Penn State, against Michigan. I firmly believe Wisconsin is the only team in the West Division that can go head-to-head with those East Division teams and make it a ball game right now, unless one of these other teams just goes crazy and does some really awesome things in the spring transfer period. Wisconsin right now is the team to beat in the Big Ten West. You get into a one-game scenario, anything can happen. It's in the Big Ten's interest also to have Wisconsin be a 9 or 10-win team going into the Big Ten championship game. The East has won every Big Ten championship game. If we're truly going away from divisions, what better way to maybe have the West win their first Big Ten championship game headed out into divisionless Big Ten football. So I'm very intrigued about what Wisconsin brings to the table. I'm very intrigued about what the Badgers have this season. Let's head to some comments. Jared Jones says Fickell's going to do great things at Wisconsin. I see Jared's got an Ohio State logo. You know, of course, Luke Fickell and the connection he has with the Buckeyes. Man, the Badgers are going to be right there. I'm so excited for Luke Fickell to get going at Wisconsin because he's going to be able to put together some really good teams, and he's going to provide the Big Ten with a lot of depth. It's just another really good team in there because when the Big Ten, like if Luke Fickell's there in 4 or 5 years, you're going to have Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, USC, and Wisconsin is going to be right there. They're going to be right there. Like what they're doing at quarterback, they're set for like 5 years at quarterback. They're fine. When's the last time you heard Wisconsin say, yeah, we're set at quarterback for 5 years? That ain't never been said. I grew up in the state. That ain't never been said. It's been said about the Packers, not the Badgers. Not the Badgers. More from Jonathan Weaver. As long as Iowa beats Minnesota, Wisconsin and Nebraska, I don't care. I don't care who else we play, Jonathan. I assume you're an Iowa fan. For me, it's Wisconsin and Iowa, and maybe Illinois in the West. That's how I see the West. I won't talk about Nebraska until I see it. I've been duped too many times by the Huskers the last few seasons to really, truly believe in there. I know there's a different coaching staff in there, but yeah. Let's see what else we got coming in the comments here. More from Mr. Weaver. Can you say there's a better defense than Iowa in the West? There's no better defense than Iowa in the conference. Iowa, I said it on last week's live show. That secondary, when you can lose Riley Moss, Kayvon Merriweather, and Terry Roberts and still have the best secondary probably in the conference, you're doing something good. Xavier and Wampka. Cooper DeGene and the turnover machine. Quinn Schulte. And then they'll add somebody else in there. It's what Phil Parker does. Iowa's going to be fine. Iowa's going to be good on defense. Noah Shannon and Logan Lee up front on the defensive. I think even though Lucas Van Ness was a really good player up front, I believe the front is going to be better as a whole for Iowa. Linebacker, I think they were really dependent on Justin Jacobs coming back and beating their leading guy, but he ended up transferring to Oregon. Iowa's going to be a great defensive team, and they've improved on offense. They just can't have Brian Ferentz be an idiot. I know that's harsh, and I know it's blunt and to the point, but it's true. You need to let Cade McNamara do what he does. You need to take the pressure off of him. You need a good running game. You need to improve your offensive line. They're going to be, I think they're going to be okay in terms of pass catchers. Eric All and Luke Lachey, you're going to have another good tight end combination at tight end you at Iowa, right? You're going to have Seth Anderson coming in as a transfer. I think he's going to be pretty good. I think Deontay Vines and Nico Regaini coming back. I'd still like to see one more transfer coming at wide receiver for Iowa, and then I'll be feeling really good. It wouldn't surprise me if they make a couple additions in the spring transfer period to see Iowa really take some steps forward and really be a good team. I think this is going to be one of the top teams in the West, and I think they're going to be really, really good. I firmly believe that. Okay, let's move on to some more comments here. Oh, boy. Got some coming in here. Let's see. Let's go back to Jared Jones. Iowa has two of my favorite defensive backs in college football, Cooper DeJean, Xavier, and Wampka. Yeah, Xavier played a really good game. He didn't play a ton, I don't think, during the regular season. You know, when you got Riley Moss, like I said, Riley Moss, Terry Roberts, Kayvon Merriweather, and the guys coming back, Quinn Schulte and Cooper DeJean. He didn't play a ton. I I will say this. Look what happened to Iowa's secondary after DeJean went out in that Nebraska game. So I think Cooper DeJean is a really big part of what Iowa wants to do defensively. Okay, a couple of years ago, 2021, Riley Moss, I think had, 6 or 7 interceptions. He didn't have as many this year. It was Cooper DeJean. Who's going to be the guy that's going to step up? It might be Xavier. It might be Xavier Mwanga. It might be him. All right. More from Jared. Thanks for all the comments tonight. Really appreciate it. Big Ten needs Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan State, Nebraska to get good again. I'll pick that apart a little bit. I'll analyze this a little bit. I'm not a huge believer in, we need Tennessee to be good. College football's better when Tennessee's good or Nebraska's good or whoever it is. Insert team here that's been good in the past. I think whoever's good is good. But I will say this, when Wisconsin, I don't need, they need to be good. I don't know if they need to be great for the Big Ten right now, but they are going to be good. They are going to be really good. You look at Iowa, Wisconsin and Iowa have just been those steady programs, steady consistency for the Badgers and the Hawkeyes. Michigan State, Nebraska, I think Nebraska's the big one just because of their fan base, and when they're good, the games just get taken to another level. They've got an awesome stadium, an awesome atmosphere over there in Lincoln, Nebraska. Got more from Mikey checking in. He says, yes, Wisconsin can win. It looks like, I'm going to get to some more comments here from Mikey. It looks like he's a Badger fan. Need Green and Williams to be the real deal. Bryson Green and C.J. Williams. C.J. Williams was a top 100 kid coming out of high school. Originally went to USC and then went and entered the portal after a year. Bryson Green was very productive in the offense at Oklahoma State. You look at that wide receiving core for Wisconsin. Holy hell. Chemry Dike and Skylar Bell are returning receivers that even in that pedestrian Wisconsin offense last year that was run by Paul Christ and Bobby Ingram, even in that offense, this was a team that played pretty good. They played pretty good, these receivers. So you look at Skylar Bell, you look at Chemry Dike, you look at C.J. Williams, you look at Bryson Green. There's a couple of kids coming in from Cincinnati with Luke Fickell that I think are going to be really good. This is going to be a fun team to watch, man. That's going to be a fun team to watch. And then you got to take a look at tight end. You look at Cundiff. You look at Rucci as well as a backup tight end. I think both of those guys, I think that can be a pretty good tight end combination right now. Mikey believes 9-3 is the floor for the Wisconsin Badgers. I would go 7-5. That's me. It's year one. Who knows how everybody's going to gel together. They're probably going to gel together pretty good, but you just never know. You just never know how things are going to go. J-Man34, friend of the channel, checking in. Cade McNamara is a huge acquisition just because he knows how to win and he knows how to protect the football and he knows how to deliver in key spots. That's what I see out of Cade McNamara. Okay, I see him as being the glue to kind of really lift this offense up to another level. That's how I see Cade McNamara right now. I think he can, a lot of people are making fun of Iowa. They're making fun of Brian Ferentz, his amended contract, all that stuff. I get it. I was the first one in line to make the jokes. But Iowa they're going to be a good football team this year, folks. They're going to be hard to beat. The Hawkeyes are going to be hard to beat. Plain and simple, game, set, match. It's going to be a tough out in the Big Ten this year. When talking about Wisconsin, I didn't even talk about Braylon Allen. And you got to talk about Braylon Allen. You've got to talk about Braylon Allen right now. Braylon Allen and Ches Malusi are going to be a great running back tandem for Wisconsin. Braylon Allen, Phil Longo had put together 2 1,000-yard rushers in the same season. I can't remember the year. It might have been 21. I'd have to go back and look. But in an offense where they threw the football around, they also had 2 1,000-yard rushers. So all of a sudden don't think, oh, you're going to get away from Wisconsin football. You're going to get away from the running game. No, that ain't happening. They're still going to run the football. It's still going to be there. I don't think anybody's doubting that because Phil Longo has shown historically at North Carolina that he can implement the pass game and run game and be explosive on both. Tanner Mordecai. When you look at Tanner Mordecai, man, you look at quarterbacks in the Big Ten and you look at J.J. McCarthy, you look at Talia Tungavailoa, you look at, who am I missing? Drew Alar. You look at what we think are going to be some of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten. Man, Tanner Mordecai is going to light it up. He's going to light it up. He was great at SMU. 3,000 yards, 30 touchdown seasons at SMU. Now you take that. You take the talent and you put it into a system that has proven to elevate quarterbacks. And now all of a sudden, oh baby, they are going to explode. I believe, I'm going to go back to that schedule. Buffalo at Washington State, Georgia Southern at Purdue, and then Rutgers. After their first 5 games, I think Tanner Mordecai is going to be talked about in the Heisman conversation. I firmly believe that. Because, I don't know, I mean, yeah, they're going to be getting some things together, and it's going to be new. It's going to be new and shiny. This Wisconsin product. It's that red sports car driving right down Regent Street, right past Camp Randall Stadium, and everybody's eyes are going to turn right down that street. That's what this Wisconsin team is right now. They're a hot commodity. Your head will turn whichever way they're going. That's what you're going to see out of the Wisconsin Badgers. Leading up into that Iowa game, and maybe some other point during the offseason, I'm going to talk about a handful of games that I believe are going to change maybe the trajectory of the Big Ten. That Iowa-Wisconsin game could be real good. It could be really, really good. Want to say hello to a USC fan. California Dreamin'. Tim Prangley checking in. You're going to need a new banner. Oh, boy, has that been a talk in this house as of the last couple of weeks in a year with the Trojans and Bruins coming in. This guy, I would probably say, when is the football season? In January, I think USC and UCLA will be officially admitted on, July 1st? I don't know, it's usually right around there, July 1st. I'm not sure when I'm going to retire the banner, but we got to have a ceremony for this guy. Got this for Christmas a few years ago, and it has been tried and true. It has been in the upstairs office when I was up there. It's been in multiple places down here. It's been with me. It's been with me throughout a large growth of this channel. So we've got to do a solid when it's finally time to retire the flag and retire the banner. But yeah, gonna have to, whether it's getting a custom banner or whatever it is, I don't really want to get one with a bunch of logos on it, because then what about, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, Oregon, talked about Washington, and then Notre Dame. I got to keep getting a flag every few years. I don't know. If they could guarantee me we just signed a TV deal, now we're not going to add anybody for 6 years, I was like, yeah, I can get a flag every 6 years. Perfect. But yeah, we're going to have to, there's going to be some changes here in the old backdrop with things happening. Appreciate that. I'm really looking forward to bringing in a lot of those California fans, the USC fans, the UCLA fans. I'm from Wisconsin, Minnesota, spent some time in Fargo, and I'm a Midwestern guy. I've never been out to California. Been out to Montana, been out to Utah, been out to Colorado. I've just never been on the left coast before. Never been out there. I'd love to go to California. That's on my bucket list. Just have never been there. But now California's Big Ten country, so gotta make it happen. Can't wait for the Trojans and the Bruins. It's gonna be different. It's gonna be different. It's When we talk about the television contract, I think it's going to provide a lot of interest. It's going to pique a lot of people. That first year of the TV deal in 2024, when CBS is in full-time, USC and UCLA, of course, are in full-time, there's going to be a lot of interest from people across the country. When you see USC play Nebraska or UCLA plays Michigan, there's going to be a lot of interest in those first-time matchups in that very first year. More from Mikey. Wisco going no huddle 2-minute offense. It's going to be tough. It's going to be real tough to deal with. It is going to be weird. I probably witnessed, prior to this year, in person the greatest Wisconsin offense ever. 2011, Russell Wilson. I was there for Nebraska's first game in the Big Ten Conference. Nebraska's first Big Ten Conference game, 2011, where Wisconsin, it was a college game day, was in town. Wisconsin just absolutely boat raced Nebraska. But that with Russell Wilson, I think Monty Ball was on that team as well. Was Melvin Gordon on that team too? I can't quite remember. But man, that was a great team. But this Wisconsin offense would not surprise me to set all kinds of records, mostly because Wisconsin just has not been a great offensive program. Running backs, yeah, but overall as an offense, no. More from the comments. We got one more segment to get to. Going to get to Big Ten versus SEC. New Big Ten versus SEC. Is the gap really as wide as some people might want you to think? So we'll talk about that. Let's see. More comments. Oh, boy. Jared Jones, you and me are on the same wavelength with this comment. Malachi Nelson, Dante Moore. Wowzers. When you look at 2024, the quarterback play in the Big Ten Conference is going to be bonkers. Maybe I should put it this way. The potential quarterback play and talent is going to be bonkers. Malachi Nelson, 5-star kid. Dante Moore, one of the very best teams in the one of the very best players in the country in the class of 2023, flipping his commitment from Oregon to UCLA at the last minute. That is going to get UCLA started off with a bang. And that's going to put them off in the right direction of the Big Ten. And then you look at the potentials. Dylan Raiola. Covered him a lot the last couple of days here on this channel. Dylan Raiola at Nebraska, the #1 player in the country in 2024. And Jaden Davis as well. A lot of crystal balls have him going to Michigan. And then Ohio State will trot somebody out there that's good. They'll find somebody. There's going to be a lot of really good quarterback talent in the Big Ten. A big reason why Dante Moore flipped his commitment was because of the exposure, was because of this new TV deal. It's going to be big for some kids. It's going to be big. It's going to be big. Tim Prangley's on the same wavelength as well. Going to have better quarterbacks. Big Ten teams are going to have to step up at the quarterback position. Matt Rule is finding out you got to recruit at the quarterback position with the big boys. You got to be up there with the big boys. If you want to win games, that's what you got to do. You need to be good at quarterback. Plain and simple. J-Man. What's up, J-Man? How will the Big Ten restructure this conference? Someone's got it in the comments, and it's what I agree with. So I'm just going to flash up the comments from Tim here. 366. I've outlined it before. I'm not sure if I did a video on it, though. I think I shared it on Twitter, where you got 3 permanent opponents, and then you rotate 6 one year, you rotate 6 the other year, 9 conference games, 3 rivals. Yeah, he's got it. I didn't even read the bottom line of that comment. But then you go beyond 16. I think if you go to 18, like if you were to add Oregon And if you were to add Oregon and if you were to add Washington, I think you got to go with a 3-7-7 and add a conference game, or else you got to go 1-8-8. So if you add more teams, I think more comes to that. I firmly believe, what do I think is going to happen? I think USC and UCLA, it's going to be it. I don't think we're going to see Oregon and Washington in this cycle. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Yeah, rumors have popped up, but I just don't think we're going to see it. Because I think USC and UCLA, we all want to find out if the travel is really going to be an issue. If it's not going to be an issue, if there's plenty of money to go around for football and the Olympic sports, then I think we might stick at 16 for a little bit. Jared Jones chiming in. Going to be some great games. Ohio State, Michigan, USC, Penn State, Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska. A lot of those teams, it's dependent on a lot of those teams becoming good again. Nebraska stepping up. Michigan State stepping back up. So many good games are possible. It is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. More from Tim. Every Big Ten team will make it to the Rose Bowl every 4 years with the new scheduling. Well, the Rose Bowl is going to be a playoff game, so I'm not sure how that's all going to work out. That's kind of sad. I'm not going to lie. I got a little emotional after the Penn State-Utah game this past January, knowing it was the final traditional Rose Bowl. Big Ten versus Pac-12. That's going to be it. Long history. Gone. Expansion, playoff. All that stuff has forced a lot of change in college football, but you got to evolve and you got to change with the times as well. More comments coming in. Talking about permanent rivals. This was kind of maybe a few weeks back. This was kind of a big topic of discussion. Want Michigan, USC, Penn State as the 3 permanent rivals. I assume for Ohio State, since I'm a Buckeye fan. That's... I think. Yeah. As the 3 permanent rivals. I didn't at first, but now I'm all in. I think on mine, I think that's what I had too. Yeah, because I had Ohio State and USC as a rival. Man, if I could, I might be able to find that document. I actually think I put it into a graphic. I had that as well. That's the combination I had for Ohio State. Oh, he's talking about playing at UCLA. Oh, I see that. Yeah, I see that now. I see that now. Mikey, I saw this too. Braylon Allen's up to 240. And where did I see that? That was on Rivals. I think this is where I saw it. I think it was on Rivals' projected depth chart. I believe is where I saw that he was, because it listed everybody's height and weight. I think that's where I saw that he was 240 pounds. And that is concerning. That is heavy for a running back. I'd be very curious to see what Ron Dane was weight-wise when he was, because he was a bigger running back. You look at John Clay. That's another one that Wisconsin has had. John Clay out of Racine Park High School in Wisconsin. There's been a lot of people at Wisconsin that have been bigger running backs, but yeah, 240. 240 is pretty big. 240 is pretty big. Going back to scheduling, I'm very curious how this is all going to happen. Who decides is going to be the commissioner? Is it going to be a committee in the office? Very interested to see how this is all going to go down. Who gets a permanent? I think the permanent rivals are going to rotate. Once we get through a schedule, maybe a recruiting cycle every 4 years, you could see some permanent. So I don't think you're going to be playing this team for years upon years upon years. I mean, could it happen? Sure. But I don't think all of this can be completely set in stone. All I want is one thing. I want one thing. I want USC Michigan State. Trojans versus Spartans, and they're playing for a big spear. Winner spears it into midfield. It writes itself. Right? The Big Ten is all about trophy games. It's all about rivalry trophies. The Spear of Greece. Spartans, Trojans. It writes itself. It's awesome. That's what I want to see out of the scheduling deal. I would love to see Michigan State and USC establish a yearly rivalry. But then what would that mean? That would mean Michigan State would probably have to play USC Michigan and Penn State every year. That's a pretty tough protected rivals portion. If you want to get involved in the show, you're leaving comments, had a super chat earlier today, earlier in the show. Very much appreciate that. It's a great way to get your comment noticed and support the channel and all I'm doing here at Big Ten Ted. Also, the Battle of, going to quickly interrupt myself here in my promotional. The Battle of Troy, it's right there. It's right there. There's so many things. There's so many things. It writes itself. It writes itself. But you can get involved in the show. Commenting is a great way to do that. Of course, we had a super chat here before. I do, in front of me, I do have a phone line that is open. All I got to do is grab my earbud here so I can hear what the heck is going on, so I can hear you. But I do have a phone line set up if that interests you. But before we're going to do that, potentially get to that, I got one more segment we're going to get to. We're going to get to one more segment, and then we're going to open it, and then the floor is yours for the final portion of the program. And the final segment I want to get to, Big Ten, SEC. We're going to be talking about the Big Ten and the SEC forever. It's just what we're going to do. All right, will they break away? Will this happen? Will that happen? We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. But we're going to be talking about it for a while. Big Ten, SEC. We're going to be talking about these two conferences going up against each other until we're all 6 feet under. Till you're dead, I'm dead. We're going to be talking about this forever. It's always going to be Big Ten. It's always going to be SEC. They're always going to be joined at the hip. Which is better? Which has more depth? Who's better at football? Who's better at basketball? We're always going to be comparing the Big Ten and the SEC because they are the two giants in college athletics. Now, starting in 2024, that is the official beginning of the era of the Power Two, right? With Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC. Of course, you got the California schools, USC and UCLA, joining the Big Ten in 2024. Once we get to that point, you're going to see a drop-off when you get to the Big 12, when you get to the Pac-12, even when you get to the ACC, I think as well. So, how do these two conferences starting in 2024 stack up against each other? The gap, some other people might tell you that the gap is wide, Georgia's great, Bama's going to get back, and all this stuff. People are going to tell you that. But if you really look at it, the gap isn't as wide as people make it out to be. Okay, people talk about Georgia as this undisputed king of college football, and I can see why they would think that. And I know close and almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. But to be honest with you, we were so close to getting a Michigan-Ohio State national championship last season. Ohio State was a shanked field goal and an injury to the best player on the field away from going to the national championship game. And Michigan did not play their best game at all. But that's your king of college football. That needed an injury to the best player on the field and a shanked field goal to win and get to the national championship game. Okay, I know, look, I see it in Georgia. I see why they're so good. I see why people think they're so good. But the Big Ten has some great programs as well, where the SEC separates itself, winning national championships, winning January games, winning playoff games. The Big Ten just hasn't won enough of those games late in the season. Okay, I mean, the last national championship, 2014, right? The inaugural playoff with Urban Meyer at Ohio State. Now, when you start kind of comparing a 16-team Big Ten to a 16-team SEC, I start with the top four from each conference. Because right away, 2024, I don't think Texas and Oklahoma is going to be a top four program. Neither one of them are going to be a top four program in the SEC. Okay, because right now, after that 2019 team at Oklahoma where Jalen Hurts got boat raced by LSU in the national semifinal, they've had a difficult time even competing in the Big 12. You know, so these last few years have not been kind to Texas and Oklahoma. You can't compete in the Big 12? And now you're going to think you're going to win 9 and 10 games in the SEC? No. So when you compare the top four, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, USC for the Big Ten. That's a pretty good top four. Blue bloods right there. Right now, the top four probably in SEC, Georgia, Bama, LSU, and Tennessee. Okay, if I match those up, USC and Tennessee, very comparable this past year. Scored a lot of points, gave up a good amount of points as well. Very comparable. Penn State and LSU, although LSU came up this year, I still think Penn State is a more complete team and is a more complete program. On a neutral field, I think Penn State comes out on top. I really do. Ohio State and Bama. Bama, I know their two losses were by one score this past year, but Ohio State is Ohio State. These two programs have been at the forefront of college football. Yes, Alabama has won many more national championships. They've won many more games late in the season, January. But right now, they're pretty comparable. Georgia and Michigan, of course, these two teams met in the semifinal a couple of years back, and it did not turn out well for Michigan. But then again, you got to go to Ohio State and Georgia. And if you match up Michigan against Alabama this past year, maybe the toughness and physicality for Michigan is too tough on a defense that gave up a lot of points at Alabama. The points I'm trying to make are the top four is pretty comparable across the board. It is. And then you go on to the next level. You see a Wisconsin. UCLA is going to jump up. I'm not sure how good they're going to be, but they're going to jump up. You look at a Michigan State, you look at an Iowa, and the next tier for the SEC is probably Florida and Auburn and Texas and Oklahoma. Wisconsin next year could beat Florida. They could beat Auburn. Probably both Texas and Oklahoma as well. You know, and then if you get Nebraska to jump up as well. But as we're talking about it right now, maybe in the second tier, the SEC takes it a little bit because of Michigan State and because of Iowa, Texas, and Oklahoma, those types of matchups. But what I'm trying to match up at the top half of the conference. The gap isn't as wide as it seems. Okay, and you might say, well, look at Texas A&M is down a little bit, and this team is down, and that team is down. But in reality, Nebraska's down. And Nebraska could come back up as well. There's teams in the Big Ten that are down, and that could come up as well. Look at how Minnesota has fared the last few years in the Big Ten, consistently winning 8 games. This is a conference, the new Big Ten, with USC at the top. Without USC, if we're comparing a 14-team Big Ten to a 14-team SEC, yeah, SEC probably takes the cake. But with these two schools coming in, I think it strengthens the Big Ten. And I just don't think that the gap is that much bigger than people think it is between the Big Ten and between the SEC. The national narrative, ESPN might say SEC this and SEC that, and people out there might talk all about the SEC. But people are going to continue to do that until the Big Ten wins a national championship. That's what the Big Ten needs to do. They need to win games late, and they need to win a national championship to really have this narrative start to flip. That's where I'm at right now with the Big Ten and with the SEC. That's where I'm at. J-Man thinks Notre Dame needs to join us. Talked about that earlier in the show. Talked about that a little bit earlier. Would make the Big Ten a lot stronger on the football side. But then again, if Notre Dame in this Power 2 era, whether they join the Big Ten or SEC, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. I talked about it. Was that last week? I can't remember when I talked about this. I talk about a lot of stuff. Notre Dame's going to be, like, right now, their schedule is as soft as it's ever been. In their however many year history, you're playing MAC teams, you're playing UNLV, you're losing to Marshall. It used to be full of Power 5 teams. And now these ACC teams, right, one of the weaker conferences, you're not playing good teams at Notre Dame. So now you go into the Big Ten, now you go into the SEC. It's a different style of play. It's going to be a different ball game. You want to win 7-8 games in the conference? That's what you might get. That's what you might get. But I would love to see Notre Dame still have their rivalry games with Michigan and Michigan State and Purdue. You know, it's always fit, but Notre Dame hasn't wanted to jump aboard. Long-time rival. USC is in there as well. I don't know if they want to be. Right? It's always been Notre Dame. It's always been Notre Dame not wanting to be in that situation. That's the way it's always been. That's the way it's always been. But, you know, whatever. Good show tonight. Really appreciate the comments here tonight as well. Hoping to do these live streams if there's enough demand and enough interest. I'm hoping to do these a little bit more often. Kind of get off track a little bit there when the season ended. Wasn't doing as much live stuff there for a while, so hoping to get back into it. And if there is enough interest and there is enough chance and all this stuff, I'm hoping to do this a lot more because I really enjoy the live stream. Hoping to get some, eventually have some people jump in on the phone calls as well. But it's I just really enjoy the live stream. I really enjoy the interaction as well, and hopefully it'll only build over time here as we continue to grow here on the channel. Really appreciate everybody for joining me tonight here on Big Ten Ted Live. I think that's going to wrap it up for tonight. We had a good one tonight. A lot of good discussion. It's realignment discussion. I think next time, which will probably be next week, we're probably going to talk about realignment because that was a hot topic today. And it's going to be a hot topic for a while. It's just there's so much. Here's kind of where I'm at with realignment. There's so much. Are Oregon and Washington going to join the Big Ten? How many times can we talk about this? How many different ways can we talk about this? I'm being tested this offseason. This is a test from the universe. So how many times can you talk about those Pacific Northwest schools? We're going to find out. Oh, boy. Really appreciate that, Jared. Really appreciate the donation from before. Great live show here tonight. Yeah, I thought this was pretty good. Thought this was pretty solid. Getting back into the swing of things as well on the live stuff. Like I said, it kind of trailed off there a little bit. And let's discuss, Tim. Shows on Wednesday at Eastern. That's kind of where we're going. That's kind of the trend, and that's the way it seems to be going. Wednesdays are a good day for me in the off season and in the regular season. My day job is I work for a local TV station here in Minnesota, producing and broadcasting high school sports on local community television. Wednesdays is a lot. That's like your religious night. Not a lot of sports on Wednesdays. A lot of times they do football on Friday nights, soccer and volleyball. We do sometimes on Tuesdays and Thursday nights. And then once you get into the winter, hockey and basketball, though that's on Tuesday, Wednesday. They rarely do Fridays. And then we have our show that we do at work as well on Mondays. It's Wednesdays it's a good middle of the week during the season, right? You're kind of allowed to decompress a little bit from what just happened and then look forward as well during the season. So I know a big thing to grow an audience on the live side of thing is make a consistent time. I can probably say, and we'll see, and we know things change, get busy, all that stuff. But Wednesdays at 8 Eastern is probably a pretty safe bet. And we'll hopefully see it grow from there. Once we get into the season, I might add a live show on select Sundays because, there is more interest during the season as well. So I might add one during a Sunday. A Sunday is a popular time for a lot of people. I know there's a Late Kick does stuff on Sundays, and I know that's a popular show. I like to watch that show as well. But sometimes to do that, I won't do Mondays. yeah, so that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. It's probably going to be on Wednesdays, definitely during the off season, and you can probably bank on that pretty consistently during the season as well. And then maybe you'll throw in another if things kind of come up as well. So I think Wednesdays is a good time. And I guess now that we're kind of on this topic, I can talk about some other things that are kind of in the works for the channel. My hope is to get a lot of calls. I can do phone calls. I can do video calls to have kind of you engage, because we're going on me talking for an hour and a half hour straight. It'd be good to have kind of give my vocal cords a little bit of a break every now and then. It's good to hear from you guys as well. I could do video calls, but I think audio and phone calls may be the way to go right now. Video, it kind of takes a little bit more as well. But yeah, this is so yeah, we're gonna do that. Did a poll on the channel the other day. I've been kicking around the idea of a podcast, and it's not just gonna be me talking about Big Ten football. That's what I do during that's the channel. That's why you subscribe. That's why you watch right now. My goal is to have a guest during every show as well, and I'm not sure the format of it, but I've been kicking around that for a while, and now lose my train of thought. And so I'm gonna do the show with a guest, maybe monthly, maybe more than that. Depends how often I can get a guest from other media outlets that cover various Big Ten teams. So we'll see. Kind of formulating that as well. You'll be able to listen to it. You'll be able to watch it. So I'm hoping for that as well. You are correct, Mr. J-Man. You have been a friend of the channel for a while. That's for sure. I appreciate everybody I appreciate everybody at any time that they decide to come on board here to Big Ten Ted Live. Jared Jones, big fan of Wednesdays. It'll continue to grow as well. Great insight and audio. This is not, I know it looks like it. It is not a pod mic. It's not a pod mic. It is, let's see if I can do this here. It is one of the best. I won't say it's the best. I'm going to say it's one of the best mics out there. It is an Electro Voice RE320. And now I just got my camera out of focus. There we go. Back in focus. So Electro Voice is a very popular brand. I used to work in radio. A very popular brand at radio stations. The RE20. Now we're going off on an audio tangent. But yeah, it looks like a pod mic, but it is not. But I appreciate that. All right, what else we got? Yeah, calls, they'll come. I know there's going to be more interest during the off season or during the regular season as well. Man, God, let's just play football right now. I don't care. Just want to play right now. Oh, it's going to be a great season. So whenever that happens, we'll get to that, and I'll always promote it. But yeah, there's more to talk about during the season as well. More from Sundyne Design saying we'll tune in as able to the podcast. Podcast will be on. I don't know if the podcast will be live yet. I'm debating they might just be on demand. That's kind of ish what I kind of want to take the comments. Maybe there's tweets. Maybe I can put out a thread and say, hey, if you got a question for so-and-so and me this week, you can leave it here or whatever. And we might talk about a select number of tweets and comments or whatever that you guys provide. So it might be an on-demand thing, but there is a podcast tab on YouTube. So that's kind of what got me going on this. So audio podcast as well. That's where I get a lot of my information. I listen to a lot of podcasts on the way to work, a lot of the Locked On Network stuff and some of the other podcasts. You ain't a real Big Ten fan unless you listen to the Eyes on Big podcast with Jeffrey the Reek and Big Kurt. A lot of good information about podcasts, and hoping to do that with some other people as well. Jared Jones is doing the Lord's work. He's been doing the Lord's work all stream long. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that notification if you haven't already, because there is a lot of really good topics still to cover this offseason. Okay, I might go into some historical topics. I got it on my list of videos. Who was the real better team in 1997? Was it Michigan or was it Nebraska? Holy crap, I can see the comment section already because that is a hot topic. The Bussin' Bowl. Who would have won that game all the way back in 1997? So I've got a lot of very interesting offseason topics, but it seems like things kind of just pop up. They just keep popping up. Oregon, Washington rumor here, and new Oregon president over here. And, think that's, you always go into an offseason and think, what am I going to talk about for 5 months? What am I going to talk about for 6 months? Things come up. People transfer, the transfer portal has really, for people like me, for content creators, they've added a lot of content, especially that first transfer portal period. The spring transfer portal period is going to be coming up pretty soon. I can think there's going to be a lot of movement because there's teams in the Big Ten that need to make moves. They need to make some big time moves. Well, I think that's going to be it for tonight. Really appreciate you guys. Really appreciate the feedback. It looks like Wednesday's 8 o'clock Eastern. That could be regular sailing here for everybody involved. Really looking to get more consistent schedule here with Big Ten TED Live. Always open to feedback. Your feedback really helps me kind of carve out what this channel really looks like. So thanks everybody for tuning in here tonight. Until next time, I'm Big Ten Ted. We will see you in the next one.